I don't see any new faces today, so I'm going to move on to outstanding RFCs. Give me 1 second to open this up and share my screen here. Okay. Skipping over the draft at the bottom here, moving on to proposal to add support for Rest Up. Seems like this one is ready to go. I've not checked the number of Rust maintainers. I'm assuming this is enough votes, yes?
Yeah. I'm more than happy with what's written here. I think it makes a lot of sense. I was just going to wait for all of the comments to be resolved between the two of y'all. I didn't have any other questions. It looks like if everything is good on your end, Emily, then I'll go in and approve this and we can merge it.
Yeah, everything's good on my end. I thought Dan was quite convincing in his replies to all of my questions, so I think we should go ahead. Cool. So that one is basically ready to go. I think this one is in fact ready to go, has all required approvals. I can merge this after this meeting today. And I believe that is also the state of the closure tools build pack is ready to go and has required approvals.
There might have been one more question for you on that one.
Go through that too quickly. Let me look at that more closely.
I think at the bottom I had one. Yeah. It's more of an implementation detail, but nothing to hold this up. Just wanted to get your thoughts on it.
Yeah, thanks for pointing this out. I definitely totally glossed over this, so I will come back and take a look.
Cool, thanks.
If this is about sort of like how I think right now, actually, I think this is a bigger point. Right now, a lot of the tooling that we use on the Java Buildpack side and also in the pipeline builder, at least, tries to force versions of everything into Semver, even when the sort of upstream component that we're referring to does not follow Semver. This works most of the time, but there's definitely a couple strange situations. And I would like to find a way, if possible, for us to relax that requirement, because as convenient as it would be if everything in the world was Semver, it's not. Right. It seems like for users, it would be better to be able to accurately express the versioning as used by upstream tools. But I don't think we have to sort of answer that question in order to move forward with the closure tools build back. Like we can do this one. We've been doing everything, but it's sort of a conversation I'd like to open up in the future for improvement in that build pack ecosystem going forward. I don't know if anyone has any thoughts on that. I can just let that topic roll for now. Let it all.
Yeah, no, I agree. Long term, we need to do that. It's just going to be a pain to get to that.
Yeah. Okay. Our final RFC here is rework hash fields in BOM. I did approve this, but I noticed Ryan's comment calling out that we should list the format of the algorithms, and I 100% agree with that.
Cool. I think my only question is that one right there, which is, does it seem appropriate to just pull directly from CycloneDX's specification on what they accept?
Makes sense to me.
All right.
Yeah, that's fine. I just want it to be specified. I just don't want I don't want it to be a free for all where anyone can just say SHA 256 or SHA-256 or SHA all caps 256. Like, just have a spec that says, if you're declaring this particular algorithm, this is how you say it.
Okay. I guess I was maybe potentially worried about like users not necessarily having control over what their algorithm whatever looks like, but that's fine. I don't really care that much. We'll just say that you make it compliant and move on. Maybe one thing that I should check before wholeheartedly putting this in is to see if SPDX has a standardized algorithm field as well. And if they do and they differ, then that's a whole nother kettle of fish. Because then we have to sort of like try and say, well, are we trying to do the Cyclone DX thing because we feel that we want to align with Cyclone DX, or do we want to do SPDX, or do we want to break the mold and really just kind of do whatever, or an amalgamation thereof? Anyway, I'll take a look at that. But if there's nothing too dramatic, then I think that this should just be in the RFC by end of day, and then I will ping both of you and say, hey, so.
That sounds like a good plan of action. Let's hope there aren't basically the same. I've not taken a look myself. Okay, that is the RFC review. Up next on our agenda, we have add curl to base tiny stacks. Frankie?
Sure. Yeah, I guess I can share my screen if that's called for. Basically, just someone submitted an issue requesting that curl be added to the base or tiny stack. And I thought the use case they described was like interesting, and they claim that this is like a common thing. And so I just wanted to bring it up here and see what context people in this room might have about this and whether people have like initial thoughts or impressions about this request. So here's me sharing my screen. Pretty much like this last part is the interesting part, where the reason that this person's saying they need curl in the run image is so that inside of the app image, they can do this to see whether or not the app is ready. Which apparently is, yeah, so it's not needed on Kate's because you can do this with init containers. Like basically have another container in your pod that does this check for you. But on Docker, this person's saying that they want a solution. So yeah, I guess, has anyone else run across this use case in the wild or like requests for this sort of thing? Does anyone have context on why curl isn't in the base image right now? Other thoughts?
I think I've seen this come up before, and the advice that we gave in that case was to expose something in your app that does the health check instead of depending on an external dependency like curl. Because I've seen the similar pattern with wget and, you know, whatever other tool you want to use.
I think the reason it's not in there is basically a security perspective, right? It's like the fewer things that are in there other than what the app needs directly, the more secure it is. And maybe especially for something like curl, which could be used to download more things into the image easily. And then just the size of the base image as well. I guess my question to Dan would be like, sort of how easy is it to sort of build the health check into the application itself for folks? My instincts are like definitely not on Tiny, where we have a policy of no conveniences, like just exactly what the app is. Base, maybe I'd be willing to hear an argument, although I lean towards not adding it.
Yeah, I can't speak to every language, but most have HTTP client libraries in them that are fairly easy to write a, you know, a one-off call that you can have it make.
I will say currently Ruby, in order to facilitate running on the base image, actually downloads curl as part of the build pack, because Ruby itself, or maybe Bundler, I can't quite remember, relies on curl being a library that's present even if it doesn't use it. It's like just a dependency that it has. So that would definitely expand like that one piece of it would expand our ability to do Ruby without us having to actually host curl anywhere, and we could sort of get rid of that dependency. But that's a purely selfish reason to put curl into the base stack.
I think if we wanted to support this use case, my feeling would be it would almost be better to have this as like a utilities build pack that installs some tiny Go binary that will only talk to local hosts, you know, just give it a port and a path and it will return true or false kind of thing. And then you don't have to have full curl to do what they're really doing.
It's a really interesting idea.
Okay, I didn't necessarily have like a desired objective. I'm like thankful for the perspectives that people have brought so far. I might say a thing to this person or like solicit more information from them. Feel free to jump on this issue, anyone here, if you want to get in the ring. Yeah, thanks folks.
Cool, thanks for bringing this up. That's an interesting conversation. Next on our agenda, we have Paketo project spec discussion. Forrest.
Yeah, this is a repeat from last week. I've started a discussion thread about potentially starting a Paketo spec. And I saw today, although Frankie, you posted a little while ago, Frankie posted something to the effect that Emily, you had brought up the idea of maybe not necessarily a spec, but instead maybe just a series of documentations or design ideas or design layout. So I'd like to hear, I guess hear what the difference is, but if you could also, and what you would be looking for, but if you could also go into that thread at some point and jot some of that down, that would be much appreciated. And anyone else who has any opinions on setting up some sort of specification or design rule for Paketo, I would love to hear from them.
My first thought is that the word specification isn't appropriate to this. I mostly think of a specification as, you know, if someone else was going to provide an implementation of something, right? So it's like, if you did X, Y, and Z, are you a Paketo build pack? If so, that's what it would mean to me if you said like Paketo build pack spec. But I feel like it's really like you're a Paketo build pack if you're in Paketo. But we could still, you know, provide a schema for, you know, Paketo specific labels that people could look up. We could take some of the Semver stuff and merge it into the style guide if that was appropriate, or publish it in our documentation. I feel like the goal of what you're proposing here feels really good to me, that we should make all of this stuff easy for folks to consume and understand, but I wouldn't necessarily call it a specification.
So I think I agree with some of that, but I think that there are things that could be considered like specification, like a Paketo build packs bill of materials looks X. We have defined this bill of materials with a schema somewhere, and that feels like it feels less like a suggestion and more like a, hey, if you're doing this, you should probably look something more like this, right? And maybe that's not fair. Another thing that I could think of is like build plan contracts with build launch metadata flags, right? Like we in Paketos basically have ad hoc stated, if you want to require another build packs layer to be available during build or launch, you can specify that when you are calling that build pack in like the build plan. Would that not also fall into the realm of something with specification, or am I just a little bit off the mark there?
Correct me if I'm wrong here, but I don't think Java does that like at all.
Oh no.
There are like a couple places where I think we accept build or launch, but it's only when there's ambiguity. It's like if you're requesting a JDK, but you want it for launch, you have to make that clear. Stuff like that. But in general, just in terms of the semantic thing here, not the content thing, it's even more like a set of API docs rather than a specification.
Awesome.
I think one of the places where this gets confusing is because the specification we interact most frequently with is the Cloud Native Buildpack specification. And there's stuff in that specification that really shouldn't be in the specification at all.
Mhm.
It's like the parts that make sense are, in order to be a build pack, I need to be compliant with the build pack specification. So I have to, follow all the rules of the build pack specification. If I do so, I am a build pack. And then also, currently what we call the platform specification is really in many places not at all a specification of what it means to be a compliant platform. It's like API docs for the lifecycle.
Okay, in that case, then
Yeah.
maybe I can go in and change the heading to be more of a discussion, or write something down where it's like, this is more of an API documentation sort of feel, where it's like, these are things that we provide, and if you are attempting to become part of the Paketo organization, you should probably provide a similar API or interface to what we're currently providing. However, it's not a requirement, which is why it's not a specification.
I think we can even make it a requirement and be like, this is a standard of the project that you must, put your build materials in this schema. Like, we can make whatever we want a requirement. It's more like a really specific quibble about the word specification.
Okay, so maybe change it to something like Paketo project standards, something like that, like generic, but it lays down what we feel you need to be a successful build pack inside of Paketo.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Frankie?
Oh yeah, I was gonna say actually like that at the idea of like, Paketo build pack like requirements or something like that, I think would actually be really, really useful for maintainers on the project considering adopting new build packs, and for people who are trying to contribute build packs. Because right now it's kind of like, yeah, write a build pack that like meets your needs. And then once you show up with an RFC, we're gonna ask you to do a bunch of things. And the things we ask you to do may be different depending on who's in the room at the time. Which is kind of confusing. But if we can sort of say like, we're going to ask about all these things, just like we're going to expect that you have tests and that they pass. We're also going to expect like A, B, C, and D. I think everyone wins if that's declared a priori as much as possible.
I'm curious about which parts of this overlap with or don't overlap with the style guide.
I think the reason I would love to do like standards, and then I would love to do requirements maybe. Like, I think that there's definitely stylistic things that we do. You good there, Tim? There's some stylistic things that we do, and then there's some stuff that I would love to make more requirements, like, hey, if you're going to be part of the Paketo organization, you need to have testing, you need to have documentation written, you need to have like these kind of, I guess, guarantees. And I think some of those were laid out super loosely in like a promotion RFC that I put out a while ago, but maybe canonizing them a little bit more might behoove us.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I do want to make sure it's not like a circular requirement, though, if this is about requirements for sort of like donation. It's like you can't be a Paketo build pack unless you have docs in the Paketo website. But you're not going to contribute to the Paketo website until someone's approved your RFC to donate the build pack, because it's a waste of your time to go edit the website if it's not going to get accepted, right?
Sure, we can fine tune all of that. I think that's a whole nother topic to this that I need to work on.
I feel like there are two things to me. It's like, what requirements we have for ourselves? Like, before we cut a release of this in Paketo, what would we
Mhm.
think needs to be in place? I think we could probably accept things that don't meet all of those boxes as long as it is easy to go from what is being donated to checking that box, right? It's like if someone is donating like a closure tools build pack and there's a really great README in there. And like, we know if we accept it, it's like, okay, we'll just turn that README into a thing on the website. Like, great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. I'm more than willing to hash out some of the ideas of what is a requirement for these build packs. But
Yeah.
I'd like to set up a place for those requirements to go before I hammer out some requirements.
Yeah.
Need
Makes
the
sense.
box before I can fill it with stuff.
Mhm.
That's all I had. I wanted to remind everyone, and then I saw that Emily, you might have a quabble. I think that makes sense. I can go in and edit that later today.
Cool. Well, that's it for our agenda today. Take care, everyone. Happy build packing. See you all next week.
Yeah.